We spend so much time talking about national leaders, right? But what about the government that's literally right outside your door? The folks in charge of your water, your roads, the local budget, all the stuff that really hits you day to day.
So, let me ask you a question. Just take a second and really think about it. Is your local government actually doing a good job? It sounds like a simple enough question, doesn't it? But man, trying to find a real, honest answer is surprisingly tough.
I mean, how do you even measure that, really? Is it just about a vibe, how you feel about your city? Or is there a way to be objective about it? To create a real, honest-to-goodness report card that shows who's passing and who's failing? Well, that's the exact puzzle we're going to unpack today.
To get to the bottom of this, we've got to go back in time. We're heading to Mexico, specifically in the 1980s and 90s. This was a time of just massive chaotic change, and it accidentally created the perfect storm, a real-world laboratory for figuring out exactly how to grade a local government.
Okay, so here's the backstory. After a huge financial crisis hit in 1982, Mexico basically had to rethink its entire game plan. See, for decades, the central government in Mexico City called all the shots. But in 1983, they passed these big constitutional reforms that kicked off a whole new era of decentralization. The idea was simple: give local cities and towns more power to control their own destiny.
But, and this is a huge but, there was a catch. At the exact same time, the federal government adopted this very hands-off free market philosophy. They basically said, hey, don't worry, the market will sort everything out. So they gave local governments the keys to the car, which sounds great. But they also took away the map, the GPS, and all the road support. So suddenly, these towns had all this new power, but they were totally on their own. And that created a super critical question. Who was actually driving well, and who was about to drive right off a cliff?
And that's what brings us to the state of Jalisco. A group of researchers at the University of Guadalajara saw this whole drama unfolding in real time. They realized, hey, if these local towns are going to be in charge now, someone needs a clear, unbiased way to see how they're actually doing. So, you know what they did? They decided to build a tool to do exactly that.
They actually came up with 3 different tools to get the full picture. One to measure crime, another for development potential, and then the big one, the main event, IDEGOB. We're going to focus on IDEGOB because it gets right to the heart of the matter. How well is the government actually running the city on a day-to-day basis? You can think of it as the ultimate government report card.
So, IDEGOB was designed to boil everything down to a single score that could tell you how well each town in Jalisco was being managed. And the most important part? It only used publicly available data. No political spin, no campaign promises, no rhetoric, just the cold, hard numbers.
So, what exactly went into this report card? Well, the researchers broke it down into 5 key pillars. Think of them as 5 big questions. First, public services. Pretty basic stuff, right? Are the lights on? Is the water running? Second, financial autonomy. Is the city making its own money, or is it just living on an allowance from the federal government? Third, spending efficiency. Is your tax money going to new parks and better roads, or is it just vanishing into a bloated bureaucracy? Fourth, financing. Is the city smart about how it uses debt and collects taxes? And finally, number 5, infrastructure. Is it actually building stuff, public works that create real long-term value for everybody?
Now, this is what I find absolutely fascinating: how they weighted the final score. Building new infrastructure was the single most important factor, making up a full quarter of the entire grade. This tells you a lot about their philosophy. They believed a good government doesn't just manage the present, it actively builds a better city for the future.
And the grading system itself? Beautifully simple. Every single municipality got a score out of 100. Then they were sorted into 4 groups: G for poor, GG for regular, GGG for good, and the top of the class, GGG for excellent. So the stage was set. The tool was built. It was time to see the results.
So, what did they find? After they ran the numbers and applied this report card to all 124 municipalities in Jalisco, well, the results were pretty stark. There were some very clear winners and some very clear losers.
Let's start with the honor roll. You had municipalities like Tlajomulco, the big tourist hub of Puerto Vallarta, and the major city of Zapopan. They all got an excellent G grade. They were just acing everything, from delivering services to managing their money. But then you look at the bottom of the class. Places like Zapotitlán de Vadillo and Ostitibaquillo got a failing G grade. They were struggling with huge deficits in just about every single category. The difference was like night and day. But this slide right here, this shows the single most important finding of the whole study. Performance wasn't random. When the researchers grouped the towns by region, a really clear pattern jumped out. Across the whole state, the average for poor or regular performance was about 57%. But down in Region 6, the South, a staggering 69% of the towns were either failing or just barely getting by. This was the proof. The old inequalities were still there. In fact, leaving these cities to fend for themselves was actually making the gap between the haves and have-nots even wider.
So after all this work, the deep dive into decades of policy, building this intricate report card, grading over 100 different governments, what was the ultimate lesson? What was the big takeaway from all of this?
It really all comes down to this one powerful idea. Just giving local governments more power wasn't some kind of magic bullet. It wasn't enough, not on its own. Without a strong, supportive regional strategy to help out the more disadvantaged areas, the rich just got richer and the poor pretty much stayed poor. It turns out handing someone the keys to the car doesn't help much if they're starting the race a full mile behind everyone else.
And that brings it all back home, to you. If you were the one grading your own local government, what's the one thing that would take it from failing to excellent? What's that one investment or that one policy change that would truly improve your community? And maybe the most important question of all, who's responsible for making sure it happens?